That's right. They did it. Mel Tucker lands his highest rated in-state recruit for the state of Michigan since coming to Michigan State. Nick Marsh. Absolutely love this kid's tape. He goes green. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Spartan friends, Spartan family, what a lovely, lovely day it is here in East Lansing. Hey, really quick, this little bonus episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Okay, it's almost like partial sigh of relief that Michigan State did land Nick Marsh, but also, more so, just pure elation. This is a massive, massive pickup for Mel Tucker, for Courtney Hawkins, for Michigan State football, for all of us fans. You know, let's think about us for once, right? We're important people too, but let's get into it. We're not going to waste any time. Why is this such a huge pickup to get Nick Marsh, the four-star wide receiver out of River Rouge High School? Well, the obvious, he's a really good player, guys. Yeah, he's 4 stars for a reason, and there are some recruiting sites out there very, very high on Nick Marsh, like Rivals, rated inside the top 60 in the entire country, the number 2 kid in the great state of Michigan, and also for the receiver position, number 11 overall. All right, like we said off the top, this is the highest rated recruit from the state of Michigan that Mel Tucker has gotten, according to Rivals. Yes, there have been some kids close, like Dylan Tatum, Alex Van Sumeren, but they give our guy Nick Marsh a slightly higher ranking than any of those other in-state kids, so that's nice. So nice, actually, that, well, Michigan State had to recruit Nick Marsh twice, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. Then, of course, another great recruiting site out there, 24/7 Sports. They have him in the top 150. Still, that's incredibly good for a football player. I don't need to tell you that, but just want to reiterate that anyway. And if you just want to trust my eyeballs, you know, if you don't think I'm just some goofball that barks into a microphone, I love what I see on this kid's tape, whether it's 7-on-7 drills, whether it's in-game, actual gameplay in his high school career. His jump ball acumen is sensational. I mean, this kid can high point a football as good as anyone that I've seen in high school, catching it right at its apex, right at the highest point that he could get to it. And at 6'3" with a basketball background, yeah, he does it a lot. And what I love more, how strong his hands are as well. Of course, you know, you're going for the jump ball. There's going to be a lot of hand battling in the air. He's always coming down with it with either 2 hands or sometimes just 1 hand is all it takes for Nick Marsh to come down with that ball. So, look, just from outside of the single player, you know, just taking a zoomed out look at this, why is this so big? We talked with Locked On recruiting expert Brian Smith, and whenever Nick Marsh's name was brought up, or whenever the question of what does Michigan State have to do to start getting some really good momentum in this month, it always did come back to Nick Marsh, because Brian Smith said, look, MSU needs a high-profile win. It would be bonus points if they could do it with a regional kid as well, to show all the other programs around them that, yes, Michigan State is a competitor in the recruiting game. So, of course, Nick can come here and compete immediately, contribute immediately, but it's also what happens off the field with recruiting. And he picked Michigan State over Penn State, Oregon, Pitt, and Kansas. Those were his last 5 schools, along with Michigan State, of course. And when he decommitted, because he was a commit to Michigan State a little bit ago, and he decommitted, we've talked about this ad nauseum on this show. I was a little scared of Penn State because they can get kids to commit on the spot. And when he left that official visit from Happy Valley without committing to the Nittany Lions, okay, we're starting to feel a little better. But again, I mean, it wasn't just those 5 schools that I named that were looking after him. I mean, Auburn had an offer for him, Michigan, Miami, Arkansas. He all but had his pick of schools, minus a few that, well, are going to miss the boat here because, again, I think this Nick Marsh kid is going to be incredible here at Michigan State. So why on earth did he pick Michigan State? Again, I just observed from the outside looking in. This is what I think. This is how I've read it. And maybe if you're on Twitter, if you're super online, you've already seen this. But on Locked On Nittany Lions, they had a Rivals reporter not too long ago talking about the Nick Marsh battle, and they said that It was all NIL. It was all NIL money. That's the only reason he picked Michigan State over Penn State. And before I pick that apart, look, I'm not naive, all right? Like, I'm sure NIL money is out there. I'm sure that there is going to be some sort of NIL contribution to this, but I have an incredibly hard time believing that's the only reason he picked Michigan State. Now, I don't know, maybe it's the location of Michigan State, that it's just an hour and 20 minutes down the road from where he lives. In his official visit to end the month of June, they had the whole Marsh family up there. You may have seen the clip on Twitter by now, but he's on the football field dancing with his grandmother, and maybe it resonated with Nick Marsh on that visit that, yes, not just the family that you get with Michigan State football, but also your actual literal family, they're going to be a lot closer as well. And believe me, I know that when the Penn State versus Michigan State game got announced at Ford Field, there was a good contingent of fans that are treating Penn State as if it's a 10-minute car ride away from the city of Detroit. Like, guys, it's still like a 6-7 hour drive to get there. All right, like, it is a lot closer to go to Michigan State than it is to Penn State. So I think maybe the sense of home helped. Also, I'm not going to claim to know everything about Penn State's receiver room or Oregon or Kansas or Pitt, but I know Michigan State's receiver room. And I know he can have an immediate impact in that room. And that's not to say there's a bunch of slouches in the room. Well, you got Alante Brown, Jerron Glover, Antonio Gates Jr., Tyler Henry, Montori Foster, Christian Fitzpatrick, all guys that we have high hopes for. Some guys are hearing really good things about outside of these closed-door spring practices. But by and large, guys we know nothing about. The only guy that we do know anything about going into this year, Trey Mosley. Sadly, he will not be there next year for Nick Marsh's incoming freshman season. So, again, all these guys that I just named possess different traits that will make them great receivers, but maybe Christian Fitzpatrick is your jump ball guy. I mean, he's another big body guy at 6'4", but I can see Nick Marsh having an instant impact. I mean, I'm not going to call him the next Charles Rogers. He's not going to put up like 900 yards and 13 touchdowns his freshman year, but I think he can be an important staple of that offense. So I think that helps as well. And also, maybe it's just this. Maybe it's just being really comfortable with the place that you have visited at least 6 times on unofficial visits. Nick Marsh has not visited another program more than Michigan State. So, yes, back when he decommitted, all right, I was a little nervous. It is very rare that you see kids decommit and then say, hey, they're still going to be one of my top schools. And then they actually are one of your top schools. I think that's one of the biggest lies in recruiting. But hey, it actually worked out. And now, now that we can just rewind the whole thing, I get why he did the whole decommitment thing. Because look, if I'm an advisor, which by the way, I am for hire, if any high-profile college football players want my services, the first thing I tell these kids is you do not commit anywhere until you have taken at least 3 official visits. I mean, he committed to Michigan State before any of these OVs really happened. Yes, he took some unofficials, but those official visits are really when you get to know the school and the program that you're going to go to. So, no, there's no sense of committing to a place before you take your OVs. Nick Marsh, he decommitted, said, all right, I'm going to take my official visits in June. We're going to look at everything that we just left behind us in those weekends, tally up the pros and cons, and beep, boop, boop. It's Michigan State. So, yeah. Crazy. I don't think it's all NIL money for a kid that picked a school he's visited at least a half dozen times, can make an instant impact in his freshman year, and also super close to home. Now, that's not the only recruiting news we have. Dylan Williams, 4-star linebacker out of California, he picks Oregon. And if you listen to yesterday's show, you might be saying, Matt, the hell's going on, man? You told us Dylan Williams was coming to Michigan State, and right here in my notes, I have whoopsie daisy on that one. Here's what happened, okay? Leading up to recording that show, everything was blowing towards Michigan State's way for the services of this great 4-star linebacker from California. The Oregon insiders were saying Michigan State. The Michigan State insiders were saying Michigan State. It was great, and guys, the Michigan State staff heard from his camp and said it was going to be the Spartans as well. Well, okay, so we published that episode, and I kid you not, in classic Locked On Spartans fashion, no more than 30 minutes after that's published, Greg Biggins, a great recruiting expert for 24/7 Sports, he knows everything there is to know about recruiting. He could tell you what Dylan Williams is going to have for dinner in 2 nights. But anyway, he posts on Scoop Ducks, that's an Oregon insider website over at 24/7 Sports, that, Smoke is blowing back over to Eugene, Oregon right now. It's actually looking good for the Ducks. And he went on to say that sometimes a kid will give a silent commitment to both coaching staffs, sleep on it, and then make their actual selection the next day, which, if that's the case in early July, more than 5 months before signing day, might seem like a good idea just to take some more time and really focus on if you want to commit to that school. But I'm not a 4-star linebacker. He's free to make his own decisions. But yeah, so that was a unique situation because, again, I want to reiterate this. I mean, this wasn't just, recruiting insiders just throwing their chips on the table without even looking at their cards. This wasn't just me hopping on the microphone and blowing smoke up Michigan State's butt because that's what everyone wants to hear. Like, no, again, the staff of your Michigan State Spartans, they thought it was Dylan Williams coming to Michigan State as well. But hey, that's the life of recruiting, baby. Just a little anecdote here. I got a text from a friend on Thursday night about Dylan Williams, and he's like, hey, does Greg Biggins know anything? And yeah, I do. And so I reached back out to my friend, which I do have. I do with friends. I know that's shocking to a lot of people here. I texted him. I got a really hard time believing that this kid will end up going to the school he picks tomorrow. Now, of course, I could be wrong on that, but what I meant by that is that this seems like a pretty soft commitment. Again, there are 5 months until early National Signing Day. I believe it's on December 20th this year. Seems like he was kind of on the fence building up to Friday's commitment. So this is a battle that for now Michigan State has lost, but I'm sure will still go on as we move closer and closer to December. Now, why did he pick Oregon? Was it NIL? Maybe, but I can't, just like we talked about with Nick Marsh, I can't cry about that. I mean, there is something that was just objectively hilarious on Twitter. When this whole Locked On Nittany Lions show happened where they said, oh, it was all NIL for Nick Marsh picking Michigan State, everyone jumped on them. Everyone jumped on their throats like, oh, how can you say it's all NIL? No, it's not all NIL. And then Dylan Williams picks Oregon, and then here goes Michigan State Twitter. And again, every fan base does some form of this, saying that, oh, Oregon just dropped the bag. Oh, Phil Knight just dropped an NIL bag. Oh, he went to Oregon because of NIL. It's like, pick one, guys. I'm sorry. Hate to yell at our own fan base, but we can't be upset about NIL anymore. This isn't 1995 where it is not legal to do this. This is incredibly legal to do. The game is the game. If it was even just all NIL, let's take away the fact that, it's hard to get a kid to move 3 time zones away from home, that Oregon is a solid football program right now. Just take all that away. NIL is the name of the game. It is open season. It cannot be used as an excuse. And if it makes you feel better, I guess, then you can use it. But it doesn't make me feel any better. I mean, so whatever. But yeah, again, long way to go until signing day. We still got Kamara Thudi. He's another great 4-star linebacker, again, from the West Coast. He still has Michigan State in his top schools, and got a long way to go here. But hey, let's wrap this up by reiterating the good news that happened today. 4-star wide receiver Nick Marsh, for the second time in his young career, picks Michigan State. I'm fired up. You should be too. Time to go have some celebration beers. Let's get it. Have a great weekend. Love you all.